Oh, it's a bit chilly this morning. Hello there. Are you thinking of going foam free with your Christmas table arrangements this year? Now the thing about going foam free is you have to take just a tiny little amount of time with it. It's a great way actually of being quite mindful about your flower arrangements. When you use flower foam, all you need to do, drop your flower foam in water, Bob's your uncle, stick in the greenery. But it just takes a little bit more thought and care when you go foam free. Hello there, I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. Now, part of that mindfulness starts right now before you've even made your arrangement, and I'll show you the mechanics that I'm going to be using a bit later on. I'm going to go for a footed container, lifted off my table a little bit. I'm going to have a pin holder inside, a metal pin holder, fixed in place with museum wax, and then a little crunching of chicken wire over the top. And before I get to that stage, I need to sort out my greenery. So I'm not going to chop wildly from my garden. Number one, because my garden isn't particularly well stocked with greenery that I can cut. And number two, why cut too much where you just take a little bit of thought and care, a little bit of pre-planning and mindfulness, and just cut the stems that you know you're going to use. So because my little container is set up a bit from the table, I want to have my greenery draping over the sides. I'm going to have one piece facing north, one piece facing south, east, west, and a little bit in the middle. So I need 5 pieces, north, south, east, west, and a little bit for the middle, plus some extra bits of greenery, because it's always nice to add in 2 or 3 contrasting foliages, just to add a little bit of textual interest. Now, the one greenery I can rely on for my garden at this time of year is buried ivy. Isn't it absolutely gorgeous? And you see how the heads are so full and heavy that it's pulling down on the stem, and that's what's going to give me this lovely arching quality to hang out of my footed container. So I reckon that one's quite short. That could be east and west, but for north and south I need my stems a little bit longer. So that's a nice handful, and actually if you're thinking of making your own Christmas doorwreath this year, you can't go wrong with a little bit of buried ivy. So this bushy greenery will give me a good grounding for my flower arrangement, but as I said before, sometimes it's nice to add in a little bit of extra greenery just for some visual contrast. And I know right next door to me here I've got some bay. Now my bay tree is really quite tall. Do you remember, was it 4 or 5 years ago, the beast from the east, when we had a prolonged period of snow and sub-zero temperatures in about February time, and our 3-metre tall bay tree just died, just went down to absolutely nothing, and we had to chop it back to about 1 metre high, and over time it's rejuvenated. So I'm going to take some of these stems, I'm going to aim for the ones at the top and do a bit of pruning at the same time. When the bush gets so tall, all the good bits are too high up and it just makes it rather difficult to keep under control. So here goes. I'm going to see how far I can reach at the top of the bush. Right up here. And another handful, that's all I need. And actually, it's got a lovely, rustly sound to this bay, and I can smell that lovely aromatic scent. Usually I like to add in 3 types of greenery or foliage. Of course, not all foliage is green, but today I've just got this small handful. I don't want to denude the whole of my garden, especially during the winter months when I haven't got any flowers growing. So I'm going to take this inside, make myself a cup of tea and warm up, and then I'll show you the mechanics, the base of my arrangement. It's certainly nice to come indoors and look, my Christmas mug getting the first outing of the year. So this is the container I've decided to arrange my flowers in, and of course it's something I've got previously from the charity shop. It probably cost me £2 or £3. So it's a footed container, just lifted up off the tabletop a little bit. And can you see down inside? That is my pin holder with a scrunch of chicken wire on the top and then some clear pot tape just to hold the chicken wire in place. So if you're not familiar with a pin holder, this is what they look like. So this is quite a small one. It's probably about 5 centimetres in diameter, whereas the one I've got inside my container, I think, is about 9 centimetres. So it's got these metal spikes on it. And although it's weighted at the bottom, you will need to fix it to the bottom of your container. And I like to use museum wax to do that. And if you're interested in how well museum wax performs against the traditional floral fix, I will leave a link to the video where I trialled the two. Basically, the floral fix will give you an instant fix. The museum wax just needs a period of time to cure and harden, but it is reusable. And this is what the museum wax looks like. It comes in quite a big container, screw top, and comes with a handy little applicator. And then you just scrape off the amount that you need to use. So you just need to warm that up in your hands, and then when you've got a sort of sausage shape of it, you add that to the edge of your pin holder. But just a word of warning, just make sure you do a dry fix first of all, so you make sure that you've got the museum wax in the right place. And depending how the pin holder will sit in your container, sometimes it's not a matter of just putting the wax on the bottom. You may need to put it on the sides. Just check where the points of contact are going to be between your individual pin holder and the container that you decide to use. The next thing I need to do is to add water into my container without spilling any. I'm going to be using roses in my arrangement today, and the roses came with some flower food, so I thought what I would do is put the flower food straight into my container, and that way they should last as long as possible. I'm going to start off with my ivy first of all, so I will recut the stems, and then any bits of greenery that are going to lie inside the water, I will remove them. You don't want them rotting off and turning your water sour, which will shorten the life of your flowers. So I'm going to do this north, south, west, east formation. So one in at the side, and I'm locking it in to the pin holder, and that's why the pin holder's there, just to anchor my stems in place. And once I've got that first piece in and I'm happy with how far it's coming out that side, I'll then measure up and put the same length piece on the other side of the container. That looks about right. Fresh cut, take the leaves off and then slide it in the other side. I want my stems to sit quite low, as if they're resting on the edge of the container. It makes the arrangement look much more natural. And then I'll add in 2 more pieces here and here. And you decide whether you want them the same length as the side pieces, so it makes quite a large round arrangement. Or if, like me, if you're putting this in the middle of your dining table, you might want the sides a little bit shorter. And the way to do that is to measure them so they are half the length of this long piece of greenery. Measure up, half the length's about there, recut the stem to length, pull off any green leaves that will be inside the water, and then that will just curve out of the front of your vase. And then I'll make another piece for this side, and then I'll end up with some sections that haven't got any greenery in. So if you've got any other lengths, they can just be tucked in where you've got a gap. And you can see how easily that fills out. So I've got the 2 long pieces at the side. Oops. 2 shorter pieces, front and back, and then some pieces put in the diagonals. At the moment, I've got nothing in the middle. So I'll take a nice bushy bit of the greenery and put that right in the middle. And there we are, greened up and ready to go. But as I said, out in the garden, sometimes it looks a little bit dull just using one kind of greenery. So I'm going to go in next with my bay and just intersperse it evenly throughout the ivy. So you can see I've roughly got a diamond shaped outline to my arrangement if you use your imagination. The 2 long pieces, the 2 shorter pieces, and then the greenery fitting in. But of course you can do whatever shape you like. So now on with my bay. So I'm going to do exactly what I did before. Take off any leaves that are going to be in the waterline, recut the stem ends, and then following that outline, just put a few stems in for added visual interest. Just alternate them around where you see a gap. Can you see, as I move the container around a little bit, the berries just nod their heads, giving a lovely sense of natural movement. Now, probably this is a good time for a little bit of a health and safety warning. Of course, you're bringing natural materials inside to enjoy at home. They're there to be looked at and enjoyed. They're not to be played with or to be mistaken as food items on your table. I'm mainly going to use roses in my arrangement, but I'm also going to use some flowers I've already got at home, like these bloom chrysanthemums and some Christmas baubles. Watch on to the end of the video if you'd like to find out how to add stems to the end of your baubles so they don't fall around in your arrangement. And also I'll show you a little way that you can convert your bauble into a tiny mini vase. Recut the stem and gently wiggle your flower into place. I've had these chrysanthemums for a while and I haven't taken this protective hood off this one, and if you ever do get a flower delivery, these came from Freddie's Flowers, and actually I'll leave a link to the video that shares my discount code if you're interested in getting the introductory offer that Freddie's Flowers are currently offering at the moment. It comes with this little plastic hood which is to protect the delicate head in transit, so you peel it off and after time the petals and the flower head will relax and it'll open out. Isn't that just mesmerising to watch? Now you can see I've got lots of gaps, and that's where I'll start to add my roses in. My roses came from the supermarket, so yesterday I took them out of their wrapping, cut their stem ends and put them in a jug of water just so that they could rest and relax, so they'd be fighting fit for today's arrangement. I like to take off most of the leaves from my roses. The rose leaves don't last very long, and I've got so much lush greenery in here that's really going to showcase the rose really well. And in fact, the bay leaf looks very similar to the rose leaf. So I'm measuring up and cutting the stems quite short. I've probably cut just over half the length of it off. I look for a gap and I add in the flower. Can you see the difference in size between the two heads? This is my freshest rose, and this is from a bunch of roses I bought about 10 days ago, and as it's still looking quite perky, I'm going to add a few of those into my arrangement, just so I've got a bit of a contrast between the size of my roses. It'll make my arrangement look more visually appealing. And you keep adding in your flowers until you run out of flowers, or you think it just looks superb as it is. I've also got some other flowers left over from a previous arrangements. 2 heads of hydrangea, which are starting to dry out. And then the rather exotic kangaroo paw or anigoxanthus. And again, that's started to dry out too, but both will add a lovely visual contrast and interest to my arrangement. And because the stems are dried or drying, they don't actually have to be in the water. What do you reckon? It's coming along nicely, isn't it? But can you see, because the red is quite dark, the red of the roses is quite dark, and the greenery is dark, there is a danger that some of that definition from all the plant material is being lost slightly. So this is where you might want to add a contrasting colour or a more sparkly texture into your arrangement. And as we're coming up to the festive period, it's time for that Christmas bling. I'm going to add some Christmas baubles into my arrangement, and hopefully that little bit of sparkle will add a bit of depth and interest to my arrangement. But the question is, how do you add in a Christmas bauble? Do you just balance it inside the arrangement? Or really, you need to add a stick onto the end of it, just so it's anchored into your arrangement and isn't going to topple out. I'll show you how. So for this, you're going to need your hot glue gun and some kebab sticks. And I have got some Christmas baubles here, and I have previously pulled off the hangers from the Christmas baubles. And then I found in my stash some of these little plastic apples. I think they originally had picks on them, but over time they've either fallen out or I've taken them out so I could use the apples for something else. So I want to add these back into my arrangement. I'll add a kebab stick to these as well. But of course, if you had some lovely rosy red apples in your fruit bowl, you could add those into your arrangement using your kebab stick as a prong. But just be aware, although we love adding apples and oranges into our arrangements at Christmas time, as the fruit ripens, it naturally lets off ethylene gas, and that will speed up the decline of your flowers. What I'm doing here is taking a little dribble of glue across the bottom end of my kebab stick. And then I slide the kebab stick into my bauble, taking care to actually run the glue and the kebab stick up the side of the whole of the bauble in order that the stick becomes fixed. That'll just take a moment to dry. And there you have a bauble on the stick which you can anchor into your flower arrangement with full confidence that it's not going to roll out. And there we have it, picks on sticks. And then you treat your picks exactly the same as you would do your flowers. So decide where you want them to go. Trim them to length. Now, because these wooden stems don't look natural, just make sure when you add your pick, you nestle the stems down into your arrangement so you see the beautiful flowers and your accessories and not your unsightly mechanics. Do you see what I mean? Those sparkly baubles just add a little bit of glamour and glitz. Just imagine how they'll sparkle if you've got a few candles around your table. And if you fancy it, why not add some fairy lights to your arrangement, just to give that little bit of sparkly glamour for the cold winter evenings. And the little bauble vase I was telling you about, for this you'll need your glue gun and some sticks. I'm going to use the leftover rose stems. I'm going to cut 3 short lengths. 1, 2, 3. and glue them onto the bottom of the bauble in a triangle formation, and that way my little vase won't roll around. Just like that. Put something dried in the little hole there, or fill your bauble vase with water for fresh plant material. Once you've made your first one, make lots more and line them up down the middle of your dining table, across your mantelpiece, or have them as little decorations on your individual place settings. So that's all for today's video. If you've enjoyed it, please give the video a like, and why not share it with a like-minded friend. And if you've got any comments about making either the foam-free table centrepiece or the little bauble vase, let me know in the comments. That's all for me for now, and I'll see you again next time.